Oh my god, she's only gone and done it. Okay, so about a number of months ago. Wait, how many months has it been? Holy shit, it's been 6 months? So about 6 months ago, I did a study into the Kagurabachi manga, specifically looking at the way that fight scenes were panelled and how movement was created. I didn't really come to a conclusion about the panelling, because I feel like that's a style and personal preference thing, but when it came to movement, I noticed that speed lines were commonly used inside clothing, which means you didn't have a lot of clutter in the panels. You just have to occasionally blood smear and so on and so forth. I then went on to try and apply this to a couple of Jujutsu Kaisen panels with varying success, but the one thing I said I wanted to do in the future was potentially look at movie fight scenes and figure out a way to panel those. Now, much like my last fight scene study video, I'm on a time limit. This was a small project I was doing for university, and I had to do it on top of all of my other work, and I'll be honest, I didn't get a lot of inking done. I ended up just picking panels instead of finishing the pages. However, a lot of my focus was on paneling anyway, because mine sucks, especially when it comes to fight scenes. I will be analysing as I go, so hopefully it won't just be me unnecessarily speaking for however long this video is. But my idea was to do 3 different fight scenes from 3 different movies. One was going to be the hotel fight scene from The Equalizer. I can't remember what my second one was going to be. And the only one I actually had time to make was Mission Impossible Fallout's bathroom fight scene. This scene is approximately 6 minutes long with the build-up to it included, and I was originally planning to try and panel all of this. I got about 2 minutes in with 15 pages and subsequently crashed out. Essentially, what I was doing was noting down what was happening in the scene, then paneling it as I was going. And honestly, I think this kind of fucked me over a little bit, because I was watching the scene as I was going, and I didn't really experiment with different shots, different perspectives. It was just the scene in a comic, which is technically the point of the study, but it just makes it very boring. However, I persevered and ended up cutting it down to around 11 pages just to focus on the fight actually happening, and ended with the fake John Locke going through the mirror. There were a couple of thumbnails that I made that actually looked like cool concepts, but would have taken me far too much time to actually try and execute it, so it makes me mad that I decided to do this as uni work, and not just as a project after I finished. However, once all of my thumbnails were done, I bordered them and then shipped them over to Procreate. And now you're probably thinking, hey, Sage, you're clearly using Clip Studio Paint. Why are you going to be using Procreate? Well, my dear viewer, I hate the way that the perspective tool works in Clip Studio. I've probably just not figured out how to use it yet, but I have crashed out enough during this project, so I wanted to use something that was very familiar to me. Essentially, I used Procreate to literally just sketch out the backgrounds. I used a blue sketch pen over the top of my red initial sketches because it helps me focus and easily differentiate the two. But this is where I kind of messed up. And if you're watching this wanting to study movies to comic scenes as well, listen to this. Do not do your backgrounds first. This will screw the whole perspective of the panel, and you will not be able to draw the anatomy you want because the background is off. And if you're lazy, like comic artists should be, because I gave myself goddamn 11 pages to do on top of an already 25-page comic, you probably don't want to go back and change it. I also heavily referenced the actual scene for this too, so I was just redrawing it shot for shot. There was no creative liberty I was giving myself. As expected, with all the hindsight you have, I crashed out when I tried to do the anatomy. I have never crashed out so much on a project. I am so sorry that you have to witness me telling you this. However, I kind of figured out at this point that half the study doesn't really work anymore. Like, figuring out how to unclutter the backgrounds and the specific paneling wouldn't exactly be as much a study as I would have liked it to be, since I'm recreating it shot for shot. I could still practice my inking though, so decided to try and speedrun the anatomy. And what better way than to dive headfirst into the shot for shot thing that I accidentally ended up doing than just taking screenshots from the YouTube video I was watching and editing it all together. Now, personally, I don't see this as tracing, since I'm only using the body proportions and not someone else's art, but I'm also doing this to actively learn character interaction and how far a realistic body can go in a comic format. So that only took me about an hour, and then turned that into a base and started inking from that. Like I said, I was on a time limit, and I had crashed out and abandoned this project multiple times during the months I was working on it, that I left this alone until about the week before my deadline. which is why I end up picking to ink panels instead of pages. Plus, some of them I really didn't want to do, like this one. It's so cool, but I don't want to try and figure that out right now, man. However, I did end up inking 4 panels of varying difficulty, in my opinion. So I wanted to spend just the rest of this video sat down and analysing each of them. So immediately, I couldn't be bothered to draw the hands, which is why it's still red ink, but you don't have to worry about that. However, I have this stylization thing that I like to do to separate black, which is just adding white lines where the original lines were. I do it for creases, hair follicles, sometimes eyelashes, if I think it adds to a scene. In this couple of panels, I think it works really well in a subtle way. Like, you can see it's there, but it fits in with the way that the clothing is shaded. You don't notice. Now, onto the speed lines in the clothing. I think on this particular set of them, they don't really help sell the movement. I think they're too spread out and not thick enough that it makes it look weirdly slow. I also think that the large gaps between the speed lines make it seem, I don't know, unfinished. It just looks like there should be a lot more there. I also feel like this is a lot worse on the panel that focuses on Ethan Hunt's hands. This one is a lot simpler, but I think it's worldly more effective. The speed lines are all going in the same direction, even the ones under the neck and on the arms of the other guy. Only reason that some are in a different direction is that it's supposed to be hatching, but that's a whole other skill that I'm working on currently. The little shock effect that I've used is super good. It conveys the emotion without a face, which I think would help with its silhouette. Plus the little heart rate monitor sound effect shapes, whatever these little bits are called, help sell the movement as well. It's like you're reading the resistance in real time, which I really like. This was the panels that made me realize that human anatomy needs to be exaggerated for comics, which I know we're all told, but it's different having to experience it for yourself and realize it in real time. The white lines help a lot with the shape of the shoulders and into the back, which I don't think this panel would have been very effective without it. The speed lines suck, but I feel like that's more of where I chose to have the lighting rather than the speed lines themselves. Like, why is the under part of his jacket lit up, but his other shoulder isn't? With the middle panel, it's really just the extended anatomy I think needs work, which will be another thing I have to add to my list to learn. However, the bottom panel I think really nails that. The way this one is shaded feels a lot more normal if the light was coming from the top. I think the sway of the suit jacket and the tie and the follow through of the smash works together in tandem beautifully to create the sense of swing. I also added another impact effect thing from the last page, which I think sells it even more. I could have used blood for this, but I think it works as an air effect since it's a KO rather than an actual beatdown. This one, I actually kind of hate, but purely from the fact I don't think it works, which for a study into what I think would work or not is great, but I like being good at something first try. The lack of suit jacket and trouser movement makes this look kind of bad, plus I think I picked the movement of action rather than the build-up and the execution, but what can you do now? I think this also has the issue of anatomy thing again, so this page is just kind of a don't do any of the stuff you see here. Honestly, I think I'm going to be doing fight scene studies until I die, because I think this is going to be one of those skills that I just have to keep perfecting, and never will because perfection doesn't exist. I definitely don't think studying from movies is a good idea for me, especially if I know the movie or I'm watching it as I go. The only way I think this could be effective is if someone told me what was happening and I went from there. There's a couple of other ways I'd like to try and do fight scene studies. A couple I have are doing some from books, no visual media that way, taking a fight scene from an anime, making it my own, and then comparing it to its original source material, or trying to style swap a Marvel comic or something along those lines. I think those would be pretty effective, and you can bet your ass I'll be making videos about them, but I don't think it'll be anytime soon, since my YouTube schedule has been planned for 2025, and my 2026 one is filling up rather quickly. But if you've enjoyed this video, please consider liking the video, comment any constructive criticism you saw of my art, or just let me know some other fight scenes that could be fun to do. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you in my next one.